This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story? We have multiple guests today. Our first guest is an Oscar-nominated actress who got her first movie role when she was in her 60s. From Nebraska to Inside Out 2, and TV ranging from Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Office, and Shameless. But astonishingly, her latest role in the critically acclaimed Thelma is her first lead role. Now at the age of 94, she's even doing her own stunts. We also have the writer-director of Thelma, who based this film on his own grandma. Our guests today are actress June Squibb and writer-director Josh Gargolin. First of all, absolutely love the film. It's a heartwarming, funny, and I can't believe it's kind of roughly based on a true story, right?
It is. It is loosely inspired by real events.
That's crazy. Before we really go into detail about the film and chat about how that all came about and how you guys met, my podcast is usually about how the individual career began, how that love of, for your sake, directing, writing, or June for you, acting, how that all came about. So I'd love to start with June and ask, where did your career start? How did this all begin for you?
Well, I right away, whenever any thoughts were forming in my mind, they were, I'm an actress, and don't ask me why, but it's something I've had within me from the time I can remember. And I did everything you could do in a small town in Illinois at school and in the community. And so I tap danced anywhere they would let me. And I acted in everything that was there. And then I went to the Cleveland Playhouse, which was at the time non-union, but it was the first regional theater, really. And I was there for 5 years, and it prepared me a lot. And then I went to New York, and I did stage. I worked on the stage, Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, regional, everything you could do stuff. And I started doing films in... I guess it was the late 80s. It was Alice, Woody Allen's film Alice was my first film.
Wow,
and I just continued from there.
Yeah, well, you've done pretty well. You're doing all right. You're doing all right.
Yeah, no, I feel good about it all.
I mean, yeah, the credits you've had and relatively, as you say, in film anyway, a relatively late start. But you're making up for it now with all your amazing projects that you've done, Oscar nominated, all these things. It's a very collective career, and I was actually I know you so familiarly from various parts, but seeing you in this movie, this was just it was such a joy. It's such a joyous film.
When she sets her mind to something, there's no stopping her. She doesn't eat, she doesn't sleep. She just keeps that laser focus until the task is done.
I'm Thelma Post. You might recognize me. Oh, from the telephone. I got scammed. I'm gonna get it back. I need a ride.
She's a little faster than you would hope.
Belle!
Son of a bitch.
And Josh, I'd like to ask you how it all began for you. How did this start?
I guess similar to June, as soon as I could get my hands on a camera of any kind, I was, just trying to make things in whatever capacity I could. So I started making short films and editing them and making them with friends from an early age. And it's funny, my path to doing it, to directing, quite honestly, was sort of a path of wearing a lot of different hats along the way as well, of performing and writing and editing and eventually directing. But I just loved it from a really early age, and I was lucky to get some encouragement, from family and peers, and I was just very very committed to making things at every turn and doing all the plays in high school that I could. And my high school weirdly had an improv comedy team, which I feel like at the time was sort of a strange thing to exist, but was amazing for me because I got introduced to improv and to just, that whole world of of collaboration, and that kind of, you know, opened my eyes in some way. And then I studied theater in college and ended up back in LA, where I was auditioning and doing some small parts here and there, and participating in what I like to call the web series boom of the early 2010s, where sort of everybody was making some form of a web series, and I was too. And then I did a fair amount of writing in a couple different arrangements, some with my partner Chloe Cersei, my partner in life and in work often. We sold some TV projects, and then also with other pals of mine, my friend Sam, my friend Quinn, who I'd come up doing improv and theater with, and kind of generating these group projects and some indie films along that lane. And then I sort of found my way circling back to just wanting to make something in sort of the way I started making things, which was just creating it and putting it on its feet and finding a way to make it happen. And Thelma, this incident happened to my grandma, this real life scam incident that sparked the idea for the script. And then I wrote that, and just, that was the one where, for whatever reason, I was like, I want to direct this. I kind of want to own wearing that hat on this one. And I feel lucky that I got to do those other jobs along the way, because I think they helped prepare me for sitting in that seat, having been more familiar with kind of all the surrounding roles in one way or another. But yeah, and then I partnered with my friends Zoe and Chris, who, you know, I'd also collaborated with over the years, and this was just us kind of teaming up, saying we want to make this movie. Let's find a way to do it, and we partnered with June, and we kind of hit the ground running. But that's sort of the gist.
Well, how did you two become connected? How did you meet, and how did the casting come about? I mean, June, it seems like an obvious casting, but I'm sure it wasn't as simple as that.
Well, I think Josh is friends with Beanie Fieldstein, and I had done a film with her, The Humans. So we were very good friends. And she was there when they were talking about Josh's new script. And it just came up. I guess June Squibb got mentioned, and Josh said, I didn't know how to get a script to her. And Beanie said, well, I can get a script to her. So she texted me and said, I'm sending you a script. And I texted back, okay. And that was it. I had the script.
It was one of the rare times when it was weirdly simple, because I do think oftentimes
so
right,
simple.
It's really not. And this one, I always wanted it to be June, and I had the point of contact through Beanie, who very generously passed it along, and we kind of saw eye to eye on it. And I think June felt that she wanted to do it in the way that I felt that she had to do it from my vantage point. So I did.
From the minute I read it, I knew that this was something I should do.
I'm grateful for that. My God.
I mean, it's an incredible performance in such just so many clever little moments, and I'm really intrigued to hear how closely to the true story, like how kind of far away did you go from the true story? Is it the kind of the original idea, and then you kind of, you know, added things in? How close did this come to the true story?
It's actually moment for moment. Exactly. No, I'm kidding. That would be insane. But I
was like, what?
No, I wish I could tell you that it was pretty much a documentary, but it is not. The incident, like the origin story script in the movie is pretty true to life, in that my grandma got a scam call, very much like the movie, someone pretending to be me. They'd been in an accident. My family also got panicked like they do in the movie, because she got very convinced of it, and somehow they just assumed she would have known if it wasn't me. And that kind of, you know, that pitch just kind of spread throughout everybody. And luckily in real life, they called Chloe, who I was mentioning, and were able to get in touch with her, because I wasn't picking up my phone, but they were able to reach her before they actually sent the money. And so she was able to confirm I was asleep. I was there. Everything. So pretty much like up through there, in terms of the plot machinations, that's all pretty true to life. And then the imagined part is really the plot, essentially, of her going to get it back, and all of those sort of slightly more genre elements that unfold. But also, I would say the characters, especially Daniel and Thelma, are very much pulled from life. Obviously being put in situations they were not precisely in, but the characters and a lot of the detail of the world and a lot of specifics are pretty true throughout. But the story obviously is somewhat imagined to explore a larger idea.
And in terms of there's a lot of mentions of, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, various kind of little nods. Are you a big fan of those kind of movies? Was this it must have been a lot of fun to kind of riff off that.
It was, and I am. I just have always had a real love for action movies and have been a huge fan of Tom Cruise and kind of the wild ethos of doing your own stunts, well into your 50s and now I guess 60s, which is just sort of wild and amazing to see. And I think something about that commitment to the thing and just going like, I'm going to do this for the project. I'm going to push it as far as I can push it. Just has always kind of resonated with me. And I felt it's always been weirdly kind of how I think about my grandma sometimes as somebody who on a different scale has always been very, just kind of like stalwart and strong and charging ahead and kind of single-minded in some ways. And that's a quality in her I've always really admired. And yeah, I just love those movies. I've been inspired by them throughout my life. And so I wanted to take some of those tropes and some of those ideas that you see in much larger action films and shrink them down to just a more everyday scope and scale to celebrate the characters' grit and tenacity and spirit, basically.
Well, talking of doing your own stunts, June, I hear you did a fair share of your own stunts for this one as well.
I did, much to their dismay. I think they were scared to death, when I said I wanted to try things. And but when I first read the script, I thought, oh boy, this scooter thing just looks like such fun. I can't wait. And they wanted a stunt person to do all the scooter work. And I said, well, let me try. And so they came to my apartment complex, and there's an oval road around it. And with the stunt coordinator running along beside me, I tried it out and I could do it. So I got to do it. And I got to do most of the scooter work.
Amazing. You did a lot of it, which was honestly, again, in true Tom Cruise style, a gift to the movie because so much of it is, we want it to feel as much like this character is doing the thing herself as you can. And obviously with safety in mind, but June was a dancer for many years and was training in Pilates in the time leading up to the shoot. And she did a lot. She was ready, which was amazing. And yeah, we were definitely scared, but I'd say we got less scared as the production went on. And we had a great stunt team with in Ryan Sturs and her June's double Heidi Pasco, who were always kind of like right there, kind of guiding us through. But June did a lot of her own stunts, especially on the scooter.
That's amazing. And in terms of how, long the shoot was, the kind of, because, everyone knows that working on a film set can be long hours. It can be pretty grueling. And seeing as you're doing, June, you're doing obviously all these things on the, would you call it a scooter, a moped? I mean, it must have been quite hard work. Was it a long shoot or did you get all this wrapped up fairly quickly?
I never felt we were pushing it, and I have certainly felt that in my time. Like when you get to 15 hours, that's a little much. But I never felt that with this film. There was something very relaxed about it, really, the shooting of it. And I don't think I had it then, but I now have a 10-hour day that I shoot with. But they were very lovely to me in terms of making sure that I wasn't shooting all day, So I think they really thought of me in terms of the scheduling. No, it wasn't bad though. What?
I'm glad it wasn't bad. I was saying we wanted to be consistent.
No. It was.
Josh is sweating, just like, don't tell them. Don't
tell them
what is she gonna say?
No, I'd say credit also to my producers, Zoe Worth and Chris Kay, for being very, very mindful of just trying to make sure that the experience of making the movie was as pleasant as it could be, while also as exacting and trying to get what we needed. So I hope we struck a balance there. And June, I'm glad you didn't feel overworked.
Oh God, no.
And if you did, you never showed it. Yeah.
No, but I never did. I didn't feel that at all.
Now for a quick break. We'll be back to the episode shortly. Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/lifeinfilm, where you'll get episodes early and uncut, amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching Elliot James Langridge Life in Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9-to-5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills, or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with Betterhelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, Betterhelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, Betterhelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. And back to the show. There was so many moments in this film that kind of just ring true. You know, you think of your own grandparents and the little moments that just felt so and touching as well. But there was a moment that I really laughed really hard. I don't want to give away too much for anyone that's listening to this that hasn't seen the film, but there is a moment where June is sneaking upstairs in her friend's house to go and get a gun, essentially, and then her friend is downstairs trying to keep the woman busy, and the gun goes off and the bullet goes through the ceiling and hits a vase downstairs, and I couldn't stop laughing. I had to wind it back because I missed what was going on. But little comic moments like that, you know, when it's all in the writing and getting those comic beats. But did a lot of the comedy, because it felt spot on, did it come out as you expected?
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. It's funny, in a lot of ways it did. And I think part of that was getting June to sign on when she did, because so much of it is there's obviously some of these kind of set piece action, you know, send ups of action genre moments. And then there's also just the character and the specifics of that, and wanting her to feel really real, but also wanting her to feel really funny in the way that my grandma is both, you know, kind of tough and determined, but also so funny and has all these interesting kind of thoughtful musings about things. And, you know, I think once we had June on board, that kind of set a tone of, we're going to play things pretty, like we want to play everything straight, and we think it'll be funnier if we just commit to the bit as opposed to winking at it. And so in that way, what was nice was that when we were shooting, it never felt like we were pushing for the comedy. Like, I felt like so much of the comedy of the movie, if it worked, in theory, would be built into the positions that everybody has put and their ability to play them with sincerity. And the cast, we got so lucky with the whole cast, really, and everybody just played it right on that line in a way that made a lot of those moments kind of come together the ways I hoped they would. Obviously, you know, there's always things that change from script to screen, and some things work better than you expected. Other moments you're like, I didn't quite get, you know, the shot I had in mind didn't quite work the way I thought it would. But I think on the whole, a lot of it came to life in a way that I was really excited by. So I was, you know, relieved and thrilled by that.
Well, it's one of those things that sometimes when you're watching a film and you're really enjoying it, there'll be something where you're totally invested and you're like, I really want this thing to happen or something to go this way. And I felt like this is what this film did, because I was like, please go there. And then it did. And then little moments with the bin exploding and then walking away from the, you know, the fire. Like, I was just like, this is just absolutely on point. I mean, I can't gush about it enough, to be honest. But to change the tack, I'd love to ask advice from both of you. You know, June, from you in the acting side of things, and Josh for the writing and directing. people that are, listening to this podcast, we have people from behind and in front of the camera. So we get people that listen to this and they want to hear advice. And I wondered if either of you had some advice for the young actors out there, for the young writers, the young directors, something you'd be willing to share.
Well, for me, I think it's something that I learned myself. You must trust yourself and don't start listening to a lot of people. And I don't mean, if you find a wonderful teacher, if you're an actor and you find a great acting teacher, use it. Get in there and learn everything they have to teach you. But basically, you have to listen to yourself, and you can't go into it thinking, what does someone think of me or think of what I'm doing? That's death for an actor. And I think that's something that I had to learn. And I think most young actors do have to learn it.
Love it. Love it. And Josh?
It's great advice. And I would sort of piggyback off that from my vantage point, which is that you have to really double down on the thing you love. Because I think it's very easy to get lost in chasing what feel like opportunities as opposed to committing to making them. It's always a delicate dance there. And again, there are real opportunities that are to be heeded. But I think often when you're trying to really make something, especially if you're writing and directing it and trying to make something personal that you're excited about and you really see in your head and want to figure out how to get it into the world, I do think it is about investing in the thing that you feel that way about and trusting that instinct and finding a way to sort of make it happen, even though you will inevitably get a lot of no's, get a lot of doubt, have a lot of road bumps. It's the thing that you're most excited about seeing through. The ability to see that through is the thing worth pushing on, I think. So sort of a similar sentiment in a way of following the thing you're passionate about, because I do think that's really important. And the process is even when it's good, it's long and it takes a lot of energy and focus. You want to make time. You're with something a long time in even in success with it or in failure, and you want to make sure you feel good about spending that time with something. So following the thing you love, I think is really important.
Love it. And you did touch on it a little bit there, but in terms of getting this movie off the ground and green lit, what was the process like there? Obviously writing it, and then you've written something and it may be great, but then you've got to get it to the right people to get it made.
Totally. It's always a journey. And I was very lucky to have Zoe and Chris, who I mentioned, on board early, because they're both really, really talented, wonderful producers. Zoe's also an actor and a writer, and someone I came up doing all of that with as well. But they were just great, fierce advocates for the project and defenders of it, and people who really believed in the way I wanted to do it and the way that they wanted to do it and the way we wanted to bring it to life. And so I think for me, it was basically teaming up with them and then getting June on board, both sort of the stamp of approval that gave us and the sense of, okay, great, let's make this happen, was really, really motivating. And so for us, it was this process of, it was sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, of cobbling together pieces and finding casts and finding people we were really passionate about, who were really passionate about the movie. Fred came on board next. And so June and Fred also are executive producers on the movie, and their kind of stamp early on was really, really meaningful. And again, just votes of confidence from people whose taste and talents are really meaningful and encouraging. And we just kind of cobbled it together to the point where we could take it out to financiers. And then we were, we got passes from some people, we got interest from some people, we got offers for partial budgets from some people. And in the process of trying to figure out kind of how that was all going to come together, with the help of CAA Indie Finance was sort of guiding us through that process. Nick Ogioni over there. And we found partners in this company, Zurich Avenue, Carl Sperry and Viviana Visani. They used to run the Zurich Film Festival for many years. And so they come from a background that is not just being, managers of a fund. They are people who are passionate about film and have seen many movies and come from the festival world. And they really believed in it too, and saw the way we wanted to do it. And so they came in and financed it outright. And so we only had one partner on that front, which was really, really I feel like it's not been my experience in the past with indie movies where you're usually kind of cobbling different pieces. So it was just really, it was wonderful. Nikki Weinstock and Ben Simpson also with Nikki's company Invention came on board, and we just sort of added pieces and added cast, and a lot of it was us also just being like, we're gonna make this movie, making it in this window, we're gonna make it happen, and navigating the yeses and nos with that in mind, with that kind of, we have to push the boulder up the hill. And that window, slid a little bit, but it didn't slide that far. And again, we were really, really grateful to Carl and Viviana for kind of swooping in and saying, let's do it. And that was the path. Those paths can be much, much longer than ours was. And I know I've experienced that as well. And this was sort of a blessed process in some ways. But even in a blessed process, it's still, it's still work and takes time. And some days you're like, uh-oh, maybe it's not going to happen. And other days you're like, okay, we're good. We're moving. We're going to do it. So that was sort of the general trajectory of how we got it on its feet.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm taking notes. I hope everyone that's listening to this as well, because that makes sense. Because it's kind of like asking a question that cannot be answered. It's everyone seems to do it in a different way. And a lot of failures to get to a success. But you guys obviously got this movie and it's doing really, really well. I mean, I'm talking to you from London, and it's in the cinemas everywhere here, like right across the world. And this is a great moment, but I'd love to ask you, with moments of downtime in between the jobs. I know I'm an actor myself, so I feel your pain also. Do you have any sort of coping mechanisms or things that you do to get through the times where you're not working so much? And I kind of feel like neither of you probably have many moments like that anymore, but to go back to the times where you maybe did.
What's your trick?
Enjoy it. I enjoy the time off now. I really do. So I'm like, oh boy, I can read. I can just sit. I can sleep late, all those things.
I'm searching for hobbies, quite honestly, because I'm so bad at managing that time because I don't know how to. I was gonna say I don't know how to read. I do know how to read, but I'm not a particularly fast reader, and I start a lot of books that I don't finish, and I'm in desperate need of a hobby, quite honestly, because I think it is hard. It is very hard to be in.
You should try stamps.
Stamps? What do I do? Collecting them?
Stamp collecting.
Okay, I could actually see getting into that.
I can see you doing that.
You can see it, Jim. Well, if you can see it, I'm inclined to believe you. I think, maybe I'll get into stamps, but this is all to say I relate to that feeling though of it's there's ups and downs. There's times that are so busy, and then you're just kind of like, okay, what now? What do I do next? And I know right now I'm doing some writing and trying to kind of get back into that side of my brain, but it takes a second sometimes. Different the mindset of being out on tour kind of with the movie, and then kind of going back into yourself and trying to be like, how did I do this again? Like, what did I write? How did I start writing? Like, no matter how many times you do it, you don't remember it on the next one. At least that's my experience. You realize you've honed some instincts or you've learned something, but it also does feel like you're starting from scratch sometimes. So I try to be patient with myself during those times, because I think it's very easy to feel like, oh God, what do I have next? And I think the lesson this movie taught me a little bit, as someone who historically was definitely always trying to figure out, kind of make sure I had a few irons in the fire, was to also let myself be a little bit panicked, let myself be a little bit patient, and just sort of sit in that and try to figure out what I want to pour as much passion into next. So I don't know if that's good advice or not, but that's definitely my experience.
No, I feel like I'm the same. So I totally get what you're saying. Most embarrassing moments,
I dropped a microphone in the toilet once. And
where?
It was a very cheap, I think it ended up on television. It was an awful film. And I did, and they got so mad at me. I have never been so embarrassed in my life. There. Not many people know about that.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to try and figure out which film this is.
See if we can detect it.
Sharks.
Oh, okay.
called Sharks?
A hint.
Yes, yeah. I don't know. I think it ended up on Hallmark. I'm not sure. It was
That's a
supposed to
great.
be sci-fi, and it didn't make it.
I
Insert
like the
clip
name of
here.
it, Sharks.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Let's find a clip from Sharks because I would like to see that too. Oh man. I mean, honestly, every moment of the process sometimes feels like an embarrassing moment. Because you're just like, do I seem like a fool or do I seem okay? But I'm trying to think of a specific. This is sort of a cop out, but I remember one time I was doing a show, and it was a Love's Labor's Lost, and I was playing a role called Don Armada, which I don't think I would ever be cast in today because that would be a huge mistake. But this was in high school, and I completely blanked out in the midst of a big monologue and just started speaking in kind of whatever Spanish I had learned at the time because the guy, he was from Spain, and so I just started speaking in Spanish until I could try to find my way back. And I don't think I ever got back to the monologue, but I do remember that being a particularly harrowing moment that I filmed, and
That's funny.
yeah, that was
Oh
bad.
my
But
God.
I'm sure there's also many more that I'm having trouble conjuring up at this moment. But
That sounds absolutely horrendous, to be fair.
it wasn't good. It was definitely shook me up.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for this, and all the best with the film. And it was a real treat. Me and my girlfriend sat down, we watched it the other night, and we just laughed the whole way through it. And so thank you so much for that.
Oh,
Thank you. This was fun.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, guys,
Pleasure talking
and best
to
of luck with all the interviews and people you got to speak to. And yeah, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Bye. Bye.
What's your plan for the day?
The usual.
What? Oh my God.
We are crazy.
What?
I didn't say anything.
Thank you to our guests June and Josh, and thank you to the team 42 West. As always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.